Okay, good morning, y'all. This is Ron. Saturday morning, and I don't know about you, but this year is flying by to me. November is almost out of here. So I hope you're okay where you are. Hope you had a good week. Um, want to do it a little bit different this morning. Before
Okay.
before I ask if there are any questions, I want to kind of do a recap of Monday. Uh, Sometimes I always think our discussions are special. I think there is a spiritual message in all of it, and something to glean from everything, especially when you go back and listen to it. Uh, Monday, I think, was a very special discussion. And I can't do it justice. And what I'm going to ask Kathy if she would lead the discussion on doing a recap of that talk, and everybody else that kind of sees something in it and the things that you added. Like, for example, uh, I can't remember if it was George brought up said something about numbers. I think I started it, but George kind of summed up the numbers right away, and everybody kind of added something into it, made it kind of brought it all together. And there's also something maybe in chapter 7 that I like to bring into that discussion as well. So I thought that was a very enlightening discussion. I like to kind of revisit it, if we will, with a recap and see where it takes us. Okay.
Okay.
Kathy, I hate to
Are we
lean.
ready?
Yeah, if you don't
No, I'm
mind.
just saying, are we ready? No, I
Yeah.
don't mind.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to do, like Ron said, a recap. A lot happened on Monday night. There was so much input and insight from everyone until I know we can't recreate what was already done. And I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, if you find time and you know how to access the recording, please go back and listen to it because it was so much said that I'm just still smiling about the insight and wisdom that was shown by others who saw so much more into the lesson. And so I don't know, Ron, should I ask if there are any questions or do the review, or how do you want me to do it?
However your heart leads you, whatever you see.
Okay. Okay, well, I'm going to ask first, are there any questions from those of you who were on Monday night before we kind of do a recap? And I'm not reteaching everything. I'm just going to do an overview of what we discussed and plug in again if you desire. But are there any questions from anything that was said on Monday night? Okay. Well, let's kind of do a recap of what we talked about. The reason this lesson came about, and the lesson is going to come from Nehemiah, the 8th chapter. But the reason that this lesson came to me last Saturday when we were discussing, I think that was kind of like the final discussion. I won't say final, but one of the major discussions that we had about the election and coming to terms with it is what it is. And here we are. We see what we see. We got what we got, and here we are now. And where do we go from here? As I was listening last Saturday, I heard something that I had not recognized before. And I'm a former counselor, school counselor, retired counselor. And I realized from listening to the discussions that we had been having since the election that we had processed ourselves through the 5 stages of grief. And when that hit me, I was like, oh, wow, we are in a point of grieving. We are at a state of grieving over everything that happened as a result of this election. And just to help familiarize you with those quick steps, the first step is denial and numbness. Well, we know we've already been there because we didn't want that election to have that outcome, and we wanted to deny it, but we were shocked by everything. And okay, then we started bargaining, and the bargaining for us looked more like, how did we miss this? How did we not see that this was going to happen? And what could we have done differently? Then we went through the depression, we went through the anger, and where we were Saturday was the final step, which is acceptance, and that's coming to terms with the emotions, coming to terms with everything that has happened. And as I listened to us talk about that on last Saturday, and I realized we were at acceptance, I also realized something else was happening. With our acceptance, we were in a state of just a somber state of existence. We were no longer joyful. We accepted what the outcome, but we had a heaviness about us. And as I was sitting there listening, this lesson came to me last Saturday while we were sitting there talking. It just started coming to me, or maybe it was last Sunday actually. And as I began to look at that, I started with the question on Monday: if we are grieving, what do we think died? What do we think? We know we lost an election, LOST. If we say we were hoping that our candidate won, then we suffered what you would call a loss. We lost that election, but we were grieving as if though we suffered an LOSS, a loss, like a death had occurred. And as I was sitting there listening to all of us talk, I started thinking, well, what was the death that really occurred? Because something did die. And when I began to think about what we've been expecting, what we've been talking about, what we've been holding fast to, and saying that this is what we are going to bring into this realm, this is what we expect to happen in this realm, I began to realize that what happened as a result of an election of a Donald J. Trump was everything we had been hoping for. Because when we started looking at racism, I don't know, years ago, Pastor taught us that we didn't start racism. So we could not be the ones to end racism. And though all of our hopes were hanging on Kamala and that she would be able to do all these great things, she showed us something that was even more important, and we almost missed that because we were looking at an outcome of an election as opposed to a spiritual outcome. And what she showed us was joy. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But going back to what really died, when we recognize that everything that we've been believing for, Christian nationalism, white nationalism, racism, white privilege, all of those things are what died with the reelection of Donald Trump. Now, if we understand that things occur or happen in the spiritual realm before they're manifested in this realm, then we don't act like we are losers because we haven't lost anything. Because I reminded you all on Monday, Linda told us when we were in the teacher conclave that what God had shared with her was we already have the win, the W-I-N. Don't worry about the W-H-E-N, like when it's going to occur. And so you don't wait till the battle is over to shout. You go ahead and get excited now and understand, because you can shout now because you've already won. So if we have already won these things, our point of view shouldn't be a somber acceptance of anything. Where should we be in our thinking right now? And what was given to me as I was sitting there listening, I said, instead of being somber and in a place of a somber acceptance, we need to be in a place of joy. Joy. And joy is about the choices you make. Joy is about a choice to say, I am not going to worry about what I see, what I hear. All of those things are not important to me. Joy is about a choice that we make. And so then after we kind of talked about that part of the lesson and we discussed what we thought we had lost, and we talked about the feeling of things that we felt really died. We expressed all of those things and we talked about those things. And then we moved into what should our response be at this point in time? Where do we go from here? What should our attitude be? If I just said it's about joy, then my first question would be, well, then what is joy? We established the point that joy is not happiness. Because happiness is conditional. If you make me happy, you can also make me unhappy. And happiness is an external thing, where joy is an internal thing. That is why it is your choice to choose joy or to stay in a state of flummox and not knowing what's going to come next. And so that was the foundation for our lesson that led us into Nehemiah, the 8th chapter. And so are there any questions or comments before we look at Nehemiah? So everybody's with me so far? Okay, good. Now, when we got to Nehemiah, the 8th chapter, this scripture was given to me because it kind of outlined exactly where we are. in today where we are and looking at everything that's happening around us. When you get to Nehemiah, the 8th chapter, what you find is that on the first day of the 7th month, the priest Ezra is meeting with all the people. It said the people were assembled together on one accord as one, men and women who were able to understand. It kept stressing the point that these people were assembled as one and they were able to understand. Now, the thing that I like about the first day of the 7th month, when you put those things together, 7 and 1 equals 8, and 8 equals a new beginning. The people were about to experience a new beginning that they were not aware of was going to happen to them. So Ezra the priest read the law to the people in the assembly. And he stood on a podium that had been built for him that raised him above the people. So the people watched him as he gave them the Mosaic law that they were to follow. And it says that as he opened the book and he's standing above them and he's reading, all the people are listening. Now, among the people who are gathered there are the Levites, who are the teachers of the law. They are also the teachers who are in the midst of the people. And so as this book is being read to them, the book of the law is being read to them, it says that the people listened, and but that Ezra read everything to them. But when the reading stopped, it said that they bowed down and worshiped the Lord with their faces to the ground. And the Levites were among the people. And while the law was being read, the people began to grieve. They heard what they heard, and I'm in the 9th verse right now, but they began to mourn and to weep. They heard everything that was being said to them, the law. It doesn't say why the law caused them to weep and mourn. It could have been the burden of keeping the law. It could have been the burden of hearing everything that was being said and hearing this and thinking, how in the world are we going to survive through this or adjust through this or whatever the case may be. It didn't tell us that, but it tells us the state that the people were in. They were grieving, just like we have been grieving. Now, while they were grieving, the priests, the Levites went into the crowd of people, the priests and the Levite, and they began to teach the people with understanding of what had been read to them. As a result of the teaching, and it said that they went among the people, and I don't know, it tells you how many Levite teachers were there, and Ezra was there. But as they were taught, now we hear Nehemiah, the governor, saying to the people in the 10th verse, go and enjoy choice food and sweet drink, and send some to those who have nothing. This day is holy to our Lord. Do not grieve, for the joy of the Lord is your strength. That was the whole context of the lesson that we talked about on Monday. What does it mean that the joy of the Lord is your strength? And how do you go from a point of grieving with things that are happening around you that feel like a burden to you, to you're transformed or transposed or transported to a state of joy? And one of the things that I didn't say on Monday was in that 11th verse, it says the Levites calmed all the people, saying, be still, for this is a holy day, do not grieve. I want to tie in be still, and then I want to talk about what this joy really is. The joy of the Lord is your strength, what that really means. We often say that we need to be still and know that God is God. Be still and know. Be still and know that you are Elohim. And we talked one day in one of the sessions last week, I think it may have been on Sunday or Saturday, I think Cheryl was mentioning about we just need to have faith. And Pastor came back and talked about there's something that's even stronger than faith, because if faith is the evidence of something that I don't see that I'm hoping for, then what is this thing about being still and knowing? Being still and knowing lets me know beyond the shadow of doubt, because I already see it with my spiritual eye. It's not something I'm hoping for. It is something that I know based on my history and based on the journey that I've already traveled with God, knowing and understanding with the Creator who I am and who He is and who we are, and that we are connected. as a result of that, knowing takes me to a place of understanding that no matter what's going on around me, I have the ability to stand and endure and to just be still. And being still just goes back to what Nick always tells us. Being still is just setting your intent and just be. Don't be shaken, don't be moved, don't move to the left, don't move to the right. Be straight, be solid, stand firm in what you know to be true. And as a result of that, the people were able to reverse that feeling of grief and loss and move into a state of joy. And as I propose to you that when we get to that state of joy and we move to that point of joy, that is what is going to usher in everything that we've been waiting to see into this realm, because it's already done in the spiritual realm. The victories that we say that we're waiting for to see racism abolished and all of these things obliterated has already taken place in the spiritual realm. It is our job to usher it into this realm and to make it happen. And I propose to you that through looking at what is written here in Nehemiah, that joy is the vehicle that moves us to a state of bringing things into this realm. Before we talk about the Spirit of the Lord, before we start moving into the joy of the Lord is my strength. Are there any questions or comments? Y'all are very quiet. Are you seeing this? Are you with me so far?
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
And I love the input that y'all had the other day, teachers and Charles and everybody. Jump in. Help me out here. Go ahead, Sheldon. I think that was Sheldon's voice, right?
No, I think that might have been GC, Kathy. That's me.
And
Oh, okay. Go ahead. All right.
Okay. Well, Kathy, if you don't mind, I'll chime in. I was waiting, until, you were ready for me to respond. And I guess this is the time. In reading Nehemiah, the 8th chapter, you mentioned about the first day and the 7th month. And you mentioned about the number 8, being new beginnings. But as I, had the opportunity to read and as Nick say, meditate, I was just basically affirming the joy of the Lord is my strength. The joy of being Elohim is my strength. Now, this is just my, own personal meditation time in reading this. But when we talk about, the number 8, it talks about the spiritual vibration, in terms of self-empowerment through right actions and livelihood. And in this number 8, I would like to just read what the spiritual meaning is. I mean, I kind of overview wise, we know it's about the right actions and right livelihood, and it's about abundance. But it says that the number 8 is the number of abundance and prosperity as the universe supplies infinite abundance of energy and resources to supply the needs and dreams, desires that everyone can conceive. And this spiritual vibration, again, is the number 8 is of prosperity. And when we talk about, to enjoy the fruits of our right actions, but more importantly, to be able to help others. So when you taught this, Kathy, again on Monday, and you shared it with us, it just put me in a mindset to be able to appreciate not only knowing that I am Elohim, but more importantly, living, by my thoughts, by my words that I speak, by my actions, that I carry out. And I just had an awesome week, in terms of just meditating, but applying it to the principles of my holistic living in terms of, again, those 3 virtues that I just spoke about in terms of our thoughts, our words, and our actions. But, the number 8, again, represents the importance of divine vibration. And when we connect one, as we look at the singularity of who we are, our self, the empowerment, and as we look at the number 7 that talks about divine vibration, it all, again, is the oneness of who we are. And so I just wanted to, just share briefly what I shared, on Monday about the importance of number 8, which is a very powerful number, in the Bible. And so I just wanted to share those thoughts. But I think more specifically, you brought it out because it was for the purpose of being able to help others do the same thing in terms of us being able to deal with our trauma or our grieving or whatever might been those divisions of separation that you're bringing it back into oneness. Those are my thoughts, Kathy. Thanks for letting me share. I'm done.
Thank you, George. And those are powerful thoughts. Thank you so much. I like that. Anyone else?
Yeah, I see something in the numbers too, and especially when we talk about why they are grieving. Uh, it's a lot in those numbers, and I agree with everything George said. Uh, 7 also allows you to take a look at your past. And part of what they may have been grieving is why they were there in the first place, the history of how they got there. Um, if you think about going back and looking at when they were taken into captivity by Nebuchadnezzar, this is them coming back and rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem. So they're coming uh, back into what they had, but the message to me is saying, because when you go back and look at chapter 7 in this, and kind of my mind running here, when you look at chapter 7 of this, the first thing he does is pulls out the book of genealogy. And Pastor pointed out to me, I had not thought about the genealogy. I looked at some of the names, but this is talking about linking you to your ancestors. This is talking about not just a history, but a look at you and where you are. See, the number 7 means to be full, to be fat. So you don't start over with 8 with an empty bucket. You start
Right.
with an experience. You start with that history. So part of putting those numbers together, the 7 and the 1 is all, yeah, it is saying a new beginning, but it is also saying stay in the here and now. There's nothing more important than the present. Don't look at the history so much. You pull the energy from it. Don't look at what this might mean in the future. Look at where you are now. This is what's applying now. And all of that history and all that stuff that all of these things represent that we have gone through, all this experience that we have gone through is to grow you and to sharpen you to be who you are right now for this moment, for this purpose, for what is happening in this country right now, what is happening in the earth right now is what you have been prepared for.
I love that. And to add to that, Ron, what I'm seeing too is what keeps you in the here and now. What helps you stay in the here and now is not to fill up on whatever is on the TV or whatever the headlines are saying, but what helped them to stay centered and to stay focused was the teaching.
Yeah.
That to me becomes the pivotal point of everything. That is why I think we bring so many things to the classes when we meet 3 days a week. We start off with anything that you've been dealing with, anything that you've heard, because it is through the teaching. That is what helps us to choose joy and to keep us focused. Now, like you said, the past, the history is where I've been in my journey up until this point. That's what gets me to a point of knowing. I know where I've been, I know what I've come through, and I know where I am now. And as a result of that, I know I have the ability, the strength, and the spirituality and that connection spiritually to be able to move forward and continue through on this journey no matter what I'm facing. I've got this. We've already got the win, the W-I-N here. And so we don't worry about the W-H-E-N because we have to make it manifest in us first. And we do that through choosing joy. Anyone else? Thank you.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about being in the now, what is the now?
Do you mean
When we say
when I
live
say
it now, right? Live
mhm.
it
I
now.
think now is a tricky word, Pastor, and I'm going to say it this way. Now is not just your environment and the elements of what you're facing right now, today, this moment. To me, now it's also about your mindset. It's your headspace. It's where you are in your thoughts. That is why you can choose joy when it looks like, for all intents and purposes, you should be falling apart and crumbling right now. So I'm going to say that's my take on now. I'd love to hear someone else.
I agree with that. I think see, it's easy to because a lot of people are saying, I've heard this at work. I kind of heard it all week. People are reminded of the last 4 years this guy was in office, and some of the other things that have happened in uh, recent times, and but the now is a mindset. Look at where you are. Look at what you have been exposed to. Look at the experiences that you've had. Uh, don't dwell on those things. This is a spiritual journey, and the now is staying intuitive. The now is not looking at things with your eyes, but with your eye. Saying,
Mm-hmm.
looking, being the spiritual being that you are, and looking at things or your view of things from that perspective, and not from the perspective of fear or anxiety.
So it's about being centered and being and understanding who you are right now in terms of um, being Elohim, and regardless of what's going on around you, what tornadoes or what hurricanes of challenges in your life or in the lives of the nation are going on, you can stay centered and focused on this is who I am right now, in spite of everything else that might be going on. And because of everything else that's going on, then my spiritual groundedness in what my ancestors experienced can boomerang me, literally can boomerang me, because I believe in what they contributed, instead of just always focusing on just that. I use that as the foundation to boomerang me even further into spiritual awareness of who I am right now, and the outlook and the perspective that I bring into focus as I relate to myself and relate to others right now. So now I agree with everything that's been said. Now is a mindset. Now it's not geography. It is being.
And
Great.
now is, hello everyone, this is Sheldon. Now is also the difference in having faith and actually knowing. Having faith is actually thinking outside of the now and thinking or hoping or even maybe believing that something is going to change in the future. Or looking at and wishing that something, as one may see, something has changed in the past. But in the now, there's an actual no. And so that is what is at this particular moment, and is the knowing of it, that thing that exists is in that particular moment. I'm finished.
Yeah, this is Audrey.
Excellent information. Go
Sheldon
ahead,
and
Audrey.
Barb just said everything I was thinking. But I also wanted to say that the now is not about time. It's about who you are, knowing who you are, and knowing what you know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Anyway, I'm
Absolutely.
done.
I agree with everything that's been said. Pastor, did I hear your voice?
Make sure everyone is spoken. Audrey, will you finish? Okay. The now. You create your own now. No one can create it for you. The now is not determined by your outer environment. Matter of fact, what you see with your eyes is actually a picture of your past. The now is what you know about the truth. Then the now is the spiritual reality that you exist in, as opposed to the world that's around you. So the now, when I say the now is your past, it is coupled with what you said earlier, Kathy, when you said that the isms have already died, even though we see them with our eyes. That is a picture of the past. That is not a picture of our now. Does that make sense?
It
Yes.
does, because I was gonna ask you to, what did that mean, but that's a perfect example, okay?
So whenever we talk about the now, we're talking about where our mindset is, where our truth is in terms of what you know. I would take it a step further than faith, because the now is, I would say that the now is a knowing that cannot be shaken, as opposed to looking forward to something. It is already who you are. I'm done.
Thank you. That's powerful. Anyone else?
Morning.
So based on
Yes.
everything, oh, go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to say, it sounds like the now is shaped by your direct experience and not your memory or your plan for the future.
Your spiritual experience.
Yes. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I can see that. Did you want to add anything to that, Pastor?
No. No.
Okay. All right.
Oh, yes, I will. Yes, I will. Please make a difference. Note the difference between what Janice said, your spiritual experience and not your religious experience.
Hmm. Yeah.
Your religious
Now, you
experience.
know, you just said a mouthful, Pastor, so expound.
Your religious experience is a picture of your past. It's not a symbol, but it is a reminder of bondage and spiritual ignorance. I'm done.
Okay.
Unless there are questions.
Questions or comments?
This is Pramel. So then is
Hey,
our
Pramel.
spiritual, hi, good morning, everyone.
Morning.
So is our spiritual is just about the now. It has nothing to do with our past.
Right. Yes. During the period, what we call our past, especially with religion, it is spiritual ignorance. Religion is a system of spiritual ignorance. It does not have an inkling as to what spirituality really is. And that is the reason that it's so easy for us to get caught up in rituals and get caught up in what our eyes see as opposed to what our eye knows. Does that help, Ramil?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thanks.
That was a good question. Thank you. I hadn't thought of that either. Anyone else?
Can I,
So
Can I ask
Okay.
one other thing?
Sure.
So as we're growing spiritually, our knowing deepens.
When we talk about spirituality,
Hmm.
I like use the word as we become spiritually aware, our knowing deepens as opposed to
Okay.
growing spiritually, because spirit is what it is. It cannot be depleted, neither can it be increased. It is what it is. It is our
That helped
awareness.
me understand that better.
I beg your pardon.
I'm sorry. You're having me rephrase that. That helped me understand it better because I was getting confused with spirituality.
The idea of spiritual growth grew out of religion. And it was based upon the idea of being a babe, quote unquote, in Christ. When in actuality, when we talk about being a spiritual baby, we are not talking about you having to grow into adolescence, etc. We are talking about you becoming more and more aware. When you were a babe, it's simply saying that you're not aware of who you are. And the more you become aware of who you are, um, the deeper your awareness becomes, and the more wisdom you are privy to, with the understanding that is able to not only enhance your knowing who you are, but also those around you without having to go through rituals. I'm done.
I'm glad Ramel asked that question because, I mean, just that one sentence that you said sort of in a nutshell clarifies everything that we've been saying. You said that religion is a system of spiritual ignorance. Ignorance as is not understanding and not knowing whatever a religion is a system of spiritual ignorance. The now is about spiritual knowing. And that encapsulates everything for me right there. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello. And I wanted to say, when Pastor Richard, if any of us, this is an aside, are very particular, specific in the way that we word things, to not overlook it. It does have a huge impact, in not only even from a subconscious level in terms of how we know and how we carry that in our experience. So that small little thing that he actually said, or that small change as in language in the way that you think about it, from becoming spirit to becoming aware spirit, much of the, I don't want to say battle, but you're so much closer to that experience or understanding that experience versus thinking that you have to try to become something versus knowing that I'm already it. I'm just growing in it, or not growing in it, but understanding it more. Very, very slight word difference, but huge, phenomenal difference as it relates to our experiencing and understanding not who we're becoming, but who we are. I'm done.
And that observation, Sheldon, is also the observation that was made in Nehemiah 8, because it kept saying, and I'm reading from the NIV version, that the people who were assembled were the people who should have been able to understand. It used that word, and that caught my attention. It said the people who were being taught were the people who should have understood. They were the ones who were assembled to understand everything that's going forward. But we see from the example that you just gave and everything that was just said in this conversation and in the scripture, that even with it being said without the teaching to bring clarity to it, there can still be confusion, because that is why the people were grieving, because they did not understand what was being said or being done or being written, that they just assumed that the people were going to understand this when they heard it. But with the clarity coming through the teaching, and just like you said, just even changing one word or one sentence or however that's what the teaching does. It brings us to a place of clarity so that we can embrace what we're hearing and know. And it continues us on this journey of knowing and enlightenment so that we have even more awareness of what we are capable of doing, because a lot of the times we feel hopeless and defeated and are grieving because we don't understand the capabilities of what we have and who we are. And so I think all of what was just said are classic examples of exactly what happened in the scripture. Questions or comments?
You said that they should have understood.
Well, that's what it alluded to in the scripture,
Right.
yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Why should they have understood? Because they had been told, and because it was assumed that they knew who they were, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that could be applicable to us currently. We should have understood the implications of what happened on November 5th, but we didn't. Why did we not? Because we were unaware of the spiritual implications of it. We were seeing the political reality through our eyes as opposed to the spiritual implications of it. What were the spiritual implications of it? The political implications of it was all of these isms are going to be perpetuated even longer by those who won this election. The spiritual implications of it is that all these things that you're seeing with your eyes has already been dismantled, has already been destroyed. You're seeing them with your eyes. However, when you embrace them with your spirit, when you embrace who you are, when you embrace the knowing, then you will begin to understand that what you see with your eyes has already been destroyed in the spiritual, meaning that the spiritual embracing of truth is what changes what you see with your eyes. But it doesn't change until the people become aware. And the people were not aware of what is happening now. They are still not aware. They see prosperity as opposed to seeing what we see with our eye. And the prosperity that they're seeing, the things, the implications of what they are seeing is all of it has a foundation of religion. Because religion is not only a system of spiritual ignorance, religion is the most deceptive philosophy in the earth. And we have been deceived into believing that on one hand, we've been deceived into believing that this current environment of that administration is going to bring prosperity. And then on the other hand, the eyes are seeing that this current administration is going to bring suffering because of the isms involved. However, the spiritual implications of it is that change only comes when that which needs to be changed is revealed to the eyes, so that people will begin to understand with their eye when it changes. Does that make sense?
It does.
It does. It does. I'm still processing, but it does.
All I'm saying is that if you look at it politically, it doesn't matter whether it's on the side of Trump or the side of Kamala Harris. Both of those are predicated on the religious system of spiritual ignorance, and both of them are seeing things politically. Neither one is seeing it with the eye, and one is seeing it as prosperity. That's the Trump side. And the other side is seeing it as a period of suffering. That's the Clinton side. And neither one of those are spiritual in nature. Both of those are based upon the beasts of the sea and the beasts of the land. Government and religion coming together as one. Does that make sense so far?
It does.
Mhm.
And then when it talks about you can't buy and sell unless you have 666 in your head, meaning that you will not be able to get spiritual nourishment until you recognize the divinity that you are. And when you recognize the divinity that you are, then you will be able to feast at the table of righteousness, the table of truth. And when you're able to do that, then you will see that you have reached a state of 7, a state of completeness in terms of your deep desire to be aware of who you are. And that is what moves you in the direction of a new beginning, which is the number 8, the 8th day.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
I like that. Yeah, it does.
It does. And my question becomes then, where are we now? At a place of completion, of fullness, of fatness, getting ready to walk into the new beginning? Or well, let me just say it this way, where are we now?
Where are we now is dependent upon a couple of things. One is, where are you individually? And then where are we collectively?
And I mean collectively, because we looked at now,
well,
being individual things.
Where we are individually has a bearing on where we are collectively. Because if we are individually struggling with one of the other instances that I mentioned, whether Kamala or Trump, if we're still there and being afraid of what may happen as a result, one way or the other, if we are there individually, then are we really a part of the collective if the collective has moved beyond that? Or are we a hindrance to it?
Are we what?
A hindrance to it.
Oh, okay.
So what I'm saying in essence is this. Either you are a disciple who leaves the upper room, or you are a disciple who remains in the upper room confused. Which one are you?
And in that analogy, as you use the upper room, can you talk about after the election how we went into the upper room?
We went into the upper room of confusion. We didn't know which way to turn. And the reason we went into the upper room is because we reverted to our principles of religion, as opposed to holding fast to our principles of truth and spirituality. And something had to take place in order for us to leave the upper room. Our sanctity, our sense of self, our sense of divinity had to be challenged. And when that was challenged, then we left the upper room and went into the uttermost parts of the world, meaning that we resumed the journey that we were on, because when the divinity was challenged, the question was raised, do you believe what you say you believe? Are you who you say you are? Do you really, really believe that? And when that question was answered in the affirmative, it is then that we were able to leave that place called the upper room. It was then that we were able to reach into the uttermost parts of the world and bring healing and bring deliverance to humanity. See, but let me stop right there for a moment. Does that make sense so far? Come on, guys.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
But I have a question, because I'm kind of confused when you said the upper room. Maybe I should just ask, what is the upper room again? Because you said there was confusion in the upper room. So I just need clarity on the upper room.
Well, are you familiar with the upper room in the scriptures?
Yeah, but I forgot. Isn't that where everybody was assembled or something like that?
The upper room in the scriptures is the place where Jesus had the wine and the bread, the communion with the disciples. And they remained there. And that's where they went rather after the crucifixion, to that place. And in that place, they were confused as to what they were going to do because they were afraid that they would be killed too. So it says that when the Holy Spirit came in a rushing wind, that they not only did they speak in other tongues, but they also were revitalized. And after having the encounter with the Holy Spirit, they left and went into the othermost parts of the world. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Well, if that is the case, the question becomes, what does it mean? The upper room is a place
Well,
where
let me go ahead. Are you?
the upper room is the place where you experience confusion. It's just a metaphor for a place where you experience confusion. And the only reason I use that metaphor is because we are so familiar with it in church, our religious teachings. And that is the place where the confusion took place. And when it talks about the Spirit coming in a rushing wind, it's simply talking about you becoming more aware, or you revisiting the awareness that you have as to who you are. And that in itself revitalizes you. And when you leave the religious principles that you have reverted to, it is at that point that you become more abreast of who you are. And in doing so, you are able to reach into the othermost parts of the world, meaning that you are able to become even more aware of the spiritual nature of your being. And that allows you to reach into the other parts of the world, meaning that it allows us to put things in the macro that influences people worldwide, in that for the purpose of their deliverance and for the purpose of their deliverance from the bondage of religion and government, etc. Does that make sense so far, Evan?
It does. And the reason why I asked that question, because when I think about upper, I think about ascension. When you're, ascending and you in that particular place.
It is
and
ascension.
it was kind of yeah, and it was kind of hard for me to see when you said confusion and then confused or either whatever. I thought about, how can I be confused when I'm in that higher realm, when I'm ascending, when I'm in that particular place? So that's why I asked the question.
You got the realms mixed up. They ascended to a place of religious height. The height of religion was in that upper room.
Okay, that now I got it. Because religion is confusion.
Yes.
So yeah, I got it.
When you
Okay.
get to the high level of your religion.
Okay, I got it now. Thank you.
Mhm.
So that is a necessary part of the journey before you can start seeing spiritually, is what you're saying, right? That you
Yes.
have to reach the pinnacle of understanding of that, what you thought truth looked like.
Well, because everything that can be shaken will be shaken, but it didn't say destroyed, it said shaken.
Yeah.
And the very elect will be what? Deceived. So the question is about the deception. The very elect will be deceived. And that deception, we were deceived, but that deception does not have to last always.
Yeah.
There are so many things involved in this that we could talk about this forever.
Well, it comes back to choice. You said the deception doesn't have to last always. It comes back to choice, right?
Yes.
What do you do with this? That you're in the upper room and you recognize it. What do you want to do with it?
I want to ask a question in regards to that. We've heard all of this talked about, and we've heard about the grief that we have encountered. Have you moved through your grief? Those who are, well, let me do it this way. When it talked about those who were in the upper room, it was talking about the disciples, wasn't it? Hello?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, now, if it was talking about the disciples and we're talking about we are on this phone, we are on Zoom now, then in the place of the disciple would be the teachers, am I right?
Yes.
And then it said
Yes.
that there were a multitude of people with them, did it not? So the
Yes.
multitude of people would be tantamount to the people who are on Zoom with us, the ones who are learning from this, whether it is today or when they listen later. Are you still with me?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. Mhm.
If that's the case, then, and it is, then the people will not be released from their religious ignorance if the disciples are not. Does that make sense?
Yes.
If the
Yes.
teachers
Mhm.
are not released from their spiritual ignorance, if religion is still a force in your life, in our life, if religion is the thing that is continuously blinding us, and if we are deceived by the outcome of an election, then our expectations cannot be for the multitude to embrace what we say, what we have taught them, or what we say we are teaching, unless we embrace it ourselves. And nothing changed with the disciples until they embraced the essence of who they are and reached into the outermost portions of the word, meaning that when they were on one accord, and that one accord is not them saying the same thing the same way. That one accord is knowing who they are and understanding what truth looks like. Truth is your now. And realizing that the truth is our now, it is at this point that we are able to influence the macro, influence the multitude of people. But that does not happen until we leave the upper room, meaning until we leave the highest the highest level, for lack of a better word, of religious thought. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It does.
Yes.
It is no coincidence that there are 13 of us. It's no coincidence. Not even knowing it was 13 of us until after 3 or 4 years when we were together or longer. It's no coincidence. It means something. And let me remind us of something. When Carla transcended, there were 12. But the day did not pass before it was 13 again. Because the day that we were there at the celebration of Carla's transitioning, that was the day that someone who swore that they would never be a teacher stepped into that role. Levon stepped into that role. That was always the same number. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So the completion of that is a continuous thing. And that continuous thing is that we have had our period of crucifixion. We've had our period, and what you call, Kathy, the grieving
The
that
grief and the slumber.
the grieving
Slumber
that's
state.
our crucifixion. That's the crucifixion. We've been there. Now it's time for us to leave the upper room. And leaving the upper room means that we are on the same page. Means that when we talk about the now, we are talking about the truth. We're talking about what we see with our eye, and we are not talking about the outer environment. We're not talking about the picture of our past. We're talking about the reality of our now. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So we have to free ourselves or not free ourselves. We have to recognize that we are free from the antics of a system of religion. And that is the reason I use the term the beast of the sea and the beast of the land, because the beast of the sea is religion and the beast of the land is government. And when both of them comes together with the crown of the throne of 10, they become the law of the land. And we must, and by them being the law of the land, they are indicative of what we are seeing with our eyes currently. And what we are seeing with our eyes currently is not what reality is. Reality is the truth, and the truth is balance. The truth is a unicity among the people for the express purpose of bringing our humanity to a place where it is free from religion. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
So and when we look at that in Revelations, that there are misinterpretations there, because when we look at that in Revelations and it talks about the idea of the 666, it has been deemed to be a negative thing, a demonic number, when it really isn't. Simply because the Greek says that 666 is the number of Nero who played the fiddle while Rome burned. That has nothing to do with this at all. Absolutely nothing. 666, 6 is the number of man, and 3 is divine. So when you see a number, when you see numbers and they are in segments of 3, they are numbers that speaks to divinity. And this is speaking to the divinity of humanity. And until you embrace your divinity, you will not be able to sup at the table, to sit at the table and feast on what truth is. If you cannot accept your divinity, if you think that you cannot be divine because you're not Jesus, because you're not God, then that is a problem. The divinity of it is, I'm sorry, the godliness of it is recognizing divinity before you can become aware of your divinity. I am divine. Now, what does that mean? And when we begin to see what that means, that is when we are able to see Elohim by looking in the mirror of ourselves. And when we are able to do that, it is then that we are able to look at both sides of this outer environment and see that Kamala and Trump, both of them represent something, their principles rather, represent a world that is the status quo. Both of them represent that. One represents the status quo when people are being deceived. The other one, Trump, represents the status quo when people are telling you exactly who they are and what they're going to do with you. And neither one of those are representative of spirituality. Neither one of them. Both of them are representative of Christianity. Both of them. And we must see them as they are. And when that happens, it is then that not only do we recognize the divinity of our essence, but we also recognize that we must bring balance to both of those views. We must transform them so that that energy becomes the energy of humility for the purpose of humanity being brought to a place of unicity with its creator. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
It does.
So we have grieved. And now it's time for us to take off the sackcloth and the ashes. It's time for us to cease to even concern ourselves with anything that pertains to the politics of this world or the religion of this world, and begin to focus even more so on what is written for our consumption, for our spiritual consumption. What is written for our spiritual consumption? The things that we have talked about what the upper room means, the things that we talked about what Revelation means, the things that we talked about of what's written there in Nehemiah, these things are written for our consumption. Even though they were designed for our bad and for our control, the truth is still in them. And we are able to glean from that truth. We're able to glean understanding from that wisdom that helps us to see with the eye so that we can be who we were created to be. And if we, the 13, cannot do that, then we cannot expect the multitude to do it either. Our desire to be who we were created to be must be the priority above everything else in our lives, because nothing else in our lives exists without us prioritizing who we are. Everything else is an illusion. Everything is an illusion, with the exception of prioritizing who we are. What do I mean by that? If you're at church, if you're at a meeting, if you have a board meeting, your job, all of those are illusions. And none of those things will work out. They will wear you out, but they won't work out the way you think they will, because what you were doing, you're saying with your mouth that you're prioritizing spirituality, but your actions speak otherwise. Our actions have to match up with our words, because our words become our deeds. And our deeds are what has the influence on humanity.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
done.
Can I say
That's
something?
a lot. Yeah, that's a lot to think about. Go ahead, Ron.
I want Pastor to tie this in to what he just said, our deeds and our actions and who we are, what we see and what we hear. I want you to look at something here. Talking about the law, right? Now I'm on start talking. Now I'm unorganized. Let me find this thing. Okay. In verse 4 of chapter 8, Nehemiah, it said, Ezra the scribe stood at a wooden podium which they had made for this purpose. Beside him stood, and it starts talking. He's got 6 people on his right, and he's got 7 people on his left. This is the one who delivers the law. What are those people standing there for? When you look up their names, most of those names have their root in Yah, Y-A-H. And the ones that don't have their root in El. Some of them means the gift of Yah. It means to hear, to obey, or some of them means to answer, to speak. Some of them means a flame of fire, a light to enlighten. Some of them means a portion to share an inheritance. Some of them mean one of them mean to work and act, to accomplish something, to perform something. It means one means to redeem, to rescue. One means the who, what, and why. The other one means royalty, to reign. And I didn't look them all up. One of them means to be noble, and there are a couple more. But what it just ties into
Ezra.
Huh?
Ezra mean?
I didn't, I didn't look up Ezra. Did anybody look up Ezra?
No.
I looked up those words because I wanted to know why they were there. And those words describe everything you just talked about.
I think I know why they're there. I need to understand of Ezra. And the number again, how many was on the right? How many was on the left?
Ezra means to help. It's help. I'm looking it up now. That's all it's got here. It's a proper noun, proper masculine name. Ezra equals help.
How many? Okay, thank you. Numbers, Ron.
Help, to support, or to assist. Yes.
Numbers.
There were 13, 6 and 7.
6 and 7, yeah. 6 on the right, 7 on the left. 13.
With the teacher in the middle.
Everything that you said, every meaning of those names speaks to one thing: deliverance.
Didn't hear that, Pastor.
Huh?
Say it one more time.
You went out.
We didn't
Every
hear
one
you.
of those speaks to deliverance.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Every one of those meanings speaks to deliverance. And
So
13 go ahead, Barbara.
so are they all aspects of Elohim? But it's reminding us that here that it doesn't, you know, all of these are aspects of who you are, but you are also one as well.
Yes.
It's like it's pulling together all of those aspects to remind us that we are one.
You
And
Yes.
that's the one yet many.
you have to help yourself. You have to help yourself. How? By understanding the magnitude of deliverance. And you cannot truly embrace the magnitude of deliverance if you cannot deliver yourself. If you cannot deliver yourself from the shackles of religion, you cannot be the deliverer for others. And that number 13 is 4, and 4 is creation. You cannot be delivered, and if you're not delivered, you cannot create anything. Does that make sense so far?
It does. Yes.
It does. I have a question, Pastor Jay.
Good.
So the names that Ron, the definition of those names that Ron was talking about, the people or the concept that was at the table on this in the upper room and on this side of Jesus, the concept of Jesus, was that not the table that we talked about? Because you said at one time that we are the table. And all those names, I saw us as being, you know, God, Yah, all those things. Am I seeing that correctly?
You are. This is the other part of that. When Ron read the meanings of those names, all of it spoke to deliverance. But guess what else about that? Each one of those thoughts, each one of those names that spoke to deliverance, people heard it the way they understood it. And that is why the words were different, but they mean the same thing. Right now, I'm talking, and people are hearing different things from what's being said, but all of it amount to the same thing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It does.
You process differently. And that is the reason we keep revisiting things and we see more into it, and people process differently, but the processing brings them to the same point, the same place, the same space of deliverance. And if you are not delivered, you cannot create. The creator who brought us into existence is not going to create anything in this earth. We have to do that. Do you know why we are in bondage? It's our choice.
Right.
It's our choice. Cat Williams said something that made sense to me. And paraphrased it. He said, we don't know who we are. We're the ones who don't know our identity. White people do. They know who we are. And that is the reason they broke the noses off the Sphinx in Egypt. Why did he knock the eye out? Why did he knock the whole head off? Broke the noses because the nose speaks to who we are. In other words, why is it that they're hiding the history? Because they know who we are. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We're the only ones who don't know who we are. We don't have an identity within the confines of our beliefs. And who we are goes far beyond being Africans. When they came to Akebalon, when they came to Africa, they did not get slaves. They didn't go to Africa to get slaves. They got kings and queens and they made them slaves. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Absolutely.
So what am I saying to you? I am saying to you, if we are not embracing every one of those names that Ron delineated, if we are not seeing that as all of that as Ezra helping humanity deliver itself from the bondage of religion, from the bondage of greed, from the bondage of government, from the bondage of all of these things that are antithetical to the existence of the children of Cabelon in this earth. Does that make sense?
Yes.
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 I
Yes.
got
My
I got
bottom
one more
line
thing to
is-
say.
But wait a minute. My bottom line is this. You've been resurrected. And when I come back, I'm gonna explain that further, okay? Go ahead.
Okay. I looked up nose and it represents heightened intuition.
14, 13.
So yeah, I just looked that up. Heightened intuition. A lot of times we do stuff and we don't understand why, but the spiritual meaning is heightened intuition. Thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
The scripture references the nostrils a lot, especially when they're talking about the incense that is burning that goes up and to the nostrils of the Creator. It mentions that. I want to say where we are though, if I may. We have ascended. What am I saying? If we look at this thing as we haven't been resurrected, if we look at this thing about the upper room, if we look at this thing about going to the uttermost parts of the world, if we look at this thing about the ascension of spirituality, what are we saying? You have been brought to a place of enlightenment that you have never experienced before. You are in a city of righteousness. You are in the place of a new heaven, a new earth. You are in the place of a consciousness that the earth has never experienced before. And that consciousness is before us now in this environment. And the enlightenment regarding that consciousness is the wisdom as to how to handle it, meaning we gather the wisdom to transpose it from something that is meant for the bad of humanity to something that is meant to enhance humanity. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes. I just have a comment, and I've been sitting here listening to everything and all the things you've been talking about, Pastor. I don't know if anybody else is feeling this, but what I'm feeling is the metaphor of the mighty rushing wind. We're in the upper room. Then here comes the spiritual side that tells us and reminds us of who we are. So that is what I'm experiencing as you're talking. But the other thing I'm realizing too is when you've been talking about where bondage, keep hearing that word. And in my meditation the other day, I kept getting untethered. Well, y'all know what a tether ball is, you know, the ball tied to the rope and you play the game, hitting it around. Well, I kept experiencing this idea of being untethered, basically being free, not in bondage. So that's kind of what I'm hearing and experiencing as I'm hearing everything today. This mighty rushing wind is just an inhale of realization of who you are. And then moving on from that. Anyway, that's what I'm feeling. So
Thank you.
Audrey, that's powerful because, you know, just, just breathing and taking in the day, I went back and looked at my journal, and on June the 7th, 2021, we wrote these notes in terms of what was taught. It talked about the beast of the sea being religion. It talked about the beast of the land government. But in my notes, something was said, acknowledge the last past presidents. It talked about 1981 Reagan, 2021 Biden. It talked about them being appointed to the Vatican, which is ecclesiastical order, the dragon Catholicism, and then it talked about Alexander the Great. And I'm just reading my notes, so please bear with me. On 666, Pastor, we talked about man, but we came up with the number 18, but for some reason it was mentioned bondage. But at the same time, if we look at it as we look at it in terms of 666, we have 18. Now, from the cosmic consciousness, we know the number 9 is cosmic consciousness. 1 plus 8. I mean, in terms of 18, we got 1 plus 8 is 9. But it says, we are they that fear the number 9 ether beings. What does this mean? You were talking about it, past in terms of we had worship misinformation, and we were suffering from post-slavery syndrome. But at the same time, again, you talked about new beginnings when we talked about 44th presidents in his meeting, and then 4 plus 4 is 8. But we look at Trump in terms of the 47th presidents, which is the number 11. And I'm just going to go at which is the door and the pathway, but that's what cosmic consciousness talk about now, us being aware of misinformation. But I think that, again, those were just some notes that was taken back on June 7th, 2021. So again, hopefully I didn't take you off course or anybody else off course, but I was just looking through my journal. Thank you for letting me share those thoughts. I'm done.
Now, thank you for sharing them.
Yeah.
We just see more than what we saw then. Even when you look at the number 9, it's still 333, which is divine consciousness. So regardless of how we look at the numbers are speaking to us. However, we can also speak to the numbers. If we allow the numbers to speak to us, then we begin to understand the universal nature of numbers, the universal voice of numbers. But if we begin to speak to numbers, then we are speaking to numbers based upon our religious understanding of numbers. And that is the reason we get the 666 in a negative way, because of what we've been told through religion. We have embraced it from the Greek as opposed to embracing it from a Kabbalah. Are you with me so far?
Yeah.
But when we allow the numbers to speak to us, Audrey was talking earlier about what she's experiencing. What she's experiencing is a pregnancy. The words that have been spoken impregnating her, and she's allowing them to speak to her, and she is not on the precipice, but is at the same time delivering into this earth a sense not only of belonging, but a sense of being spiritually influential, because not only are the numbers speaking, but the words are. The numbers are hidden messages, and the numbers you can extrapolate them out even further than the 8 and the 3 times 6 is 18, and 8 and 1 is 9, and 333 is 9. You can extrapolate them out even beyond that. And the more we extrapolate those numbers, the more we begin to understand the universal nature of our being. We are not confined to the environment of this earth. We are far beyond that. We are the essence of the universe itself. We are the, if the universe is the energy source and we are the energy, then we are the universe as well. Meaning that being the essence of the universe, we have the opportunity to bring into rhythm those who are out of rhythm. And when we talk about putting something in the macro and people embracing it, all we are doing is bringing them into rhythm with the universe. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
And that's the total message, or the gist of the message, I should say, of our deliverance, of our crucifixion. I mean, we talked about this. Father, forgive them, for they know what they're doing. In other words, restore them because they don't know what they are doing. They don't understand that the cosmic mother who's been rejected, the one who's received the brunt of ridicule, the one who has been raped and robbed of her essence, is the one from whom everyone came. The Eve gene is still there. The rejection of your mother is the rejection of life itself. Because without the womb of the mother, life does not come into this earth. So when we talk about the brutality, when we talk about the degradation, when we talk about all of the things that the daughter of Akebalon has endured, we are talking about the badgering of life itself. And when we begin to see that and embrace the cosmic mother, when we begin to embrace the energy of that womb, it is then that the healing takes place. But healing cannot take place in the earth until the cosmic mother is healed. And that healing comes not simply because we love, but because we respect the presence of the cosmic mother. We respect what she represents. We respect that energy. Does that make sense so far?
Yes.
Absolutely.
We have an obligation to embrace that. And I hear the words that are being uttered, and especially the words that are being uttered from the lips of those who are a representative manifestation of feminine energy. They are reverberating within me. I hear them, not with my ears. I hear them with my soul. And what I'm hearing is, we are on the same page, but we did not get on the same page by studying. We did not get on the same page by teaching. We are on the same page by birth. These words, these numbers impregnates the femininity, and we have been birthed by it. That's what puts us on the same page. That's what puts us in the same sentence. That's what makes us the same word. That's what makes us the same letter that's in the word. That's what makes us one. And because we are one, we are able to carry out our mission. Dear ancestors, I understand the mission now. The mission is to bring humanity to a place where it embraces the cosmic mother for who she is. And at the same time, rejects the pseudo father, reject this masculine God who brought no life into the earth, who does not have a womb to birth, but has been put in that place of a womb. A seed without a womb dies. It cannot reproduce without a womb. Here we are, resurrected beings, elevated to a place of understanding the wisdom of the universe, brought out of the deep of darkness into a light of understanding the wisdom of the ancient ones, embracing the wisdom of the ancient ones and becoming the essence of the ancient ones, and understanding that it's not, as Ron said, a genealogy, it is ancestry. And because of that ancestry, we are able to be who we were brought into this earth to be. None of us were born to be religious. We were born to be deliverers. And religion taught us how to be deliverers and what we are to be delivered from. We were Moses in the tight place of Egypt, and we have been brought out of that space for the purpose of drawing out of humanity those things that kept humanity in bondage and caused humanity to suffer endlessly, seemingly. We are the change. We are not in the space of change. We are the change. Yeah. Accept the deliverance and remember what your priorities are. It's not what you do in this physical world. It's what you do and who you are as you embrace the spiritual essence of your being. I'm done.
Pastor, you said a seed without a womb dies.
Yes, ma'am.
Conversely, a womb without seed cannot create.
Right.
And so therein is the need for that oneness. That masculine energy and feminine energy must work with each other in order to create. And the experience I've gotten from our lesson today is that creativity. It's when we were talking about what it means, 7 is fulfillment, and we are now in the 8th day. We're now not in the 7th day. We're in the 8th day. That's what resonates with me from what we've talked about today. That beyond being fulfilled, now we are ready to create. And that creativity has to do with being in alignment with the universe itself. Yes. And the prodigy of the universe, whatever is birthed from and through the universe, perpetuates itself. It perpetuates universal principles. It perpetuates the desire for humankind to be at peace, in love with each other, knowing the truth of our spiritual being righteous, doing things because it's right to do, not because for any other reason, but you do the right thing because it's right to do, and understanding that whatever we sow, that's what we get. And so we have to be, in our creativity, hyper conscious of what we're sowing, because what we sow comes from our thoughts, our words, and as you said earlier, the deeds are represented by what's manifested in the world. So I can't put it into words precisely, but what I'm experiencing is what the 8th day, quote unquote, is.
Barbara, may I add something to that? The womb,
Certainly.
The womb will not accept the seed that does not respect it.
Amen.
Yeah.
I want you to remember that. The womb will not receive that a seed that doesn't respect it. And if your respect does not begin in the world that you live in the environment that you exist in, it will not. It will not transcend to the spiritual either. What am I saying to you? If I cannot respect this woman who's sitting in front of me, if I cannot respect the representation, the manifestation of femininity in this environment, how can I be expected to respect it spiritually? And without that respect, the seed is not accepted. It's not that it dies in the womb won't even accept it. Period.
And what does that rejected seed look like spiritually? I mean,
Donald Trump,
okay.
men, white men, is the rejected seed. And I mean the European mindset of white men is the rejected seed. That's what it looks like. And the reason that seed is rejected is because it doesn't respect the womb. What does that look like? Disrespecting the womb is denigrating the female. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, if the womb will not accept the seed that does not respect it, then what is created will be in alignment. What is accepted will be in alignment with universal principles, which tells us then that, again, we don't have to worry about what the eyes see. We don't have to worry about any of that stuff because we're in the 8th day of creation now. And if the womb only accepts that which respects it, which honors it, which understands what it is, and that it's there to nurture them. If the seed understands that, then what is going to be birthed is beyond what the physical eye sees. It has to be.
Yes.
It is what the eye sees, which is going to be naturally in alignment with, in step with, in oneness with the universal principles.
Thank you. I'm done, God.
All righty. All right, beautiful place to pause for today. I never like to say end, because this doesn't end. Our minds and hearts keep running and working as we get off the line, and we pick up at that point when we get back together. So we take a pause and ponder what has been discussed today. Beautiful place to do that. So if there are not any other thoughts or questions, look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning, 11 a.m., okay? Have a great day.
Have a great day. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.